Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Usually when we think about a profession facing extinction, we picture something, I don't know, out of a history book.
Right, like the telegraph operator.
Exactly. Or like the video rental clerk, people who were simply bypassed by some new piece of technology.
Yeah, the world just moved on. The tool wasn't needed anymore. It's a very clean narrative, honestly.
It is. But what happens when the profession on the chopping block is, well, the one responsible for managing the actual humans building that technology?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole different story.
Right, and that is exactly what we are looking at today. It honestly feels like watching one of those blockbuster movies where the scientist is tapping on a seismograph, sweating, saying, like, the big one is coming.
Yeah, and in this case, that scientist is Johnny Taylor.
Yes, the CEO of SHRM. So at their 2026 conference, he stood up in front of thousands of HR practitioners and delivered this just incredibly blunt warning.
He basically said, human resources faces extinction.
Extinction. His exact word. Unless, practitioners become these indispensable experts. He specifically called for HR to reinvent itself as the chief work officer.
Which is quite the title change.
It is. So our mission for you on this deep dive is to unpack this whole existential crisis. We're using a super provocative article by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover titled HR's Reckoning: Why Expertise Won't Save a Profession Built to be Dismissed.
Such a good title. What's fascinating here is that Taylor's warning at SHRM, it doesn't just materialize out of thin air.
Right, the threats are real.
Oh, very real. And they're closing in from multiple directions right now. I mean, first, you have artificial intelligence rapidly absorbing all the transactional work.
Like recruiting and screening.
Exactly. Initial resume screening, baseline performance management, all that. And then, simultaneously, finance departments are swooping in
Wait, finance? Why finance?
because they're attempting to take over compensation planning. They just view it purely as a mathematical modeling exercise.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess that makes sense from their perspective. And then on a ground level, you have operational leaders just totally bypassing HR entirely, right?
Right. They're redesigning workflows within their own teams, which leaves chief executives looking at the HR department and just questioning its fundamental value.
Beyond, like, filing compliance paperwork.
Exactly. The threat of obsolescence is very, very real.
But here is where I want to push back on the proposed solution, though. Because we know the threat is real. But Westover's article argues that Johnny Taylor's whole chief work officer idea completely misses the mark.
Yeah, the idea where HR professionals essentially become these hyper-analytical spreadsheet wizards.
Right. So if a lack of data skills isn't the problem, what is?
Well, Westover's core thesis is that HR's marginalization has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of technical skill. It's not a competency issue at all.
Really? Then what's driving it?
It is a structural and demographic power imbalance, period.
Yeah.
The assumption that, getting more certifications or mastering data analytics will suddenly force executives to respect HR, it's a false diagnosis.
Because no amount of data can fix a fundamental conflict of interest.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack that conflict of interest for a second. Because reading this, it sounds like HR is playing the role of a referee on a football field, but their boss is the head coach of one of the teams playing.
Oh, that captures this structural flaw perfectly. Yes.
Right. It's impossible.
It is. HR operates under this massive contradiction, this dual mandate. On one hand, they are tasked with protecting employee welfare and advocating for the workforce.
But on the other hand,
They report directly to an executive team whose financial incentives usually push them toward maximizing extraction from those exact same employees.
with as few constraints as possible, obviously.
Right, so when the referee throws a flag on their own boss for a foul.
The referee gets sidelined.
ex-
And the source material points out something really striking about who exactly is getting sidelined here. The demographic data is wild.
It really is. What were the numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Okay, so HR is about 71 to 74% women.
Wow.
Yeah, and nearly 40% people of color. Meanwhile, the McKinsey data in the text shows the C-suite remains overwhelmingly white and male.
Right.
Women hold just 29% of those C-suite roles.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, look at the sociology of this. It becomes clear we aren't just talking about corporate reporting lines here.
We're talking about societal biases.
Exactly. Westover points out that HR's marginalization reflects a systematic devaluation of what gets coded as quote-unquote caring work.
Or people management.
Right. Historically, labor performed predominantly by women and minorities is just financially and structurally devalued.
So when an HR department brings advice to an executive team, and that advice conflicts with the executive's desire for, say, short-term cost cutting.
It's not just a polite disagreement over strategy.
Right. The advice gets dismissed because of a power dynamic that extends way beyond the organizational chart.
Yep. You cannot spreadsheet your way out of a structural bias. And that is exactly why rebranding as a chief work officer won't actually save the profession.
That makes total sense. But if someone listening to this right now is looking at their own company's skyrocketing turnover, they're probably wondering, wait, why isn't the C-suite panicking?
Oh, they should be.
Right. If executives are constantly dismissing HR because of these biases, what is the actual measurable cost to the business? Like the real multi-trillion-dollar fallout?
It is quite literally organizational hemorrhaging on a global scale.
Hemorrhaging.
Yeah. When HR is disrespected and sidelined, the immediate downstream effect is actively disengaged employees.
Yeah.
And Gallup estimates that this disengagement cost the global economy $8.8 trillion.
Trillion with a T.
Yes. That is roughly 9% of global GDP.
That's insane.
Lost entirely to diminished productivity and just pure apathy.
And the specific penalties detailed in the text are just brutal. Like, turnover alone costs a company 6 to 9 months of an employee's salary.
Right, and think about sectors like retail or hospitality.
Where annual turnover routinely tops 60%.
Yeah, that is a massive recurring tax on the business.
Yeah.
Just constantly bleeding money.
And then look at the legal and compliance risks. In 2023 alone, the EEOC received over 73,000 workplace discrimination charges.
73,000.
Costing companies over $665 million in monetary benefits. The crazy part, in many of those cases, HR had actually flagged a concern internally, but leadership just overruled them.
Because of that power imbalance we just talked about.
Exactly. But we also have to talk about the physical toll this takes on the human body, because the text goes deep into the individual health impacts of job strain.
This part is so important. So, job strain occurs when an employee is subjected to high demands, but given low control and low support.
Basically a toxic work environment.
Right. And from a biological perspective, this keeps the human body in a constant state of fight or flight.
So adrenaline, cortisol, all of that.
Yes. Chronic release of stress hormones like cortisol completely alters your metabolism. It leads to measurable, severe increases in cardiovascular disease, clinical depression, metabolic syndrome.
It's literally killing people.
It is. The cascading human cost of bad management is just profound.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of anyone listening who has ever, looked at a corporate balance sheet.
Sure, go for it.
If the financial and human costs are this astronomical, if people are getting sick and the company is losing millions, shouldn't the C-suite be begging HR to fix this? What is the disconnect?
It's a great question.
Do executives genuinely believe new technology and agile software teams can just automate these human problems away without HR?
Honestly, many executives do believe that. And it's a very dangerous illusion.
How so?
Well, the rise of agile operating models actually masks the problem by decentralizing it.
Oh, I see.
Think about an agile framework, right? You have product teams self-organizing, they're running their own sprints, they're managing their own peer-to-peer performance.
So they don't think they need HR.
Exactly. It completely dilutes HR's centralized authority. Traditional HR starts to feel completely irrelevant to how frontline work actually gets done.
Wow, yeah. Technology handles the payroll, frontline managers handle the daily tasks.
And HR is just left holding the compliance paperwork while the culture quietly rots from the inside out.
That is such a bleak picture. So since tech and agile models are actually masking the problem rather than solving it, how does HR actually claim its seat at the table?
They have to pivot.
Right. How do they survive this without just becoming the spreadsheet jockeys that Johnny Taylor suggested?
By anchoring their authority in something that executives absolutely cannot argue with.
Which is?
Measurable business outcomes driven by respect. HR needs to enforce respect, not as this, soft buzzword, but as a hard competitive strategy.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the text brings up Whole Foods as an example of this.
Yes, specifically looking at what they did before they were acquired by Amazon.
Right. They implemented radical, transparent compensation. Literally anyone could look up what any other employee made.
Which is terrifying for most traditional managers to even contemplate.
I would sweat if I were a manager.
Seriously. The initial reaction to that kind of transparency is always massive internal friction. People get angry when they find out what the person at the next desk is making.
But the text argues that friction is actually the point, isn't it?
Yes, because it completely eliminates information asymmetry. By making it public, bias can no longer hide in the shadows of confidential HR files.
Oh, wow. So managers were suddenly forced to logically justify why one person was paid more than another.
Exactly, based on actual role requirements and performance, not just because someone happened to be, a more aggressive negotiator during their interview.
Or because they played golf with the boss.
Right, and it ultimately led to lower than industry average turnover.
But if we want to look at an even larger, just undeniable counterexample to the usual corporate greed, let's look at Costco.
Oh, the Costco case study is phenomenal.
It really is. So the retail industry average for frontline workers is around $24 an hour. But Costco pays its warehouse workers an average of over $30 an hour.
Plus massive health coverage, even for dependents.
Yeah. And they promote from within so rigorously that their CEO actually started in the warehouse.
And Wall Street critics have constantly told Costco they could boost short-term profits by slashing those labor costs.
Because they view payroll just as an operating expense to be minimized.
Right, but Costco's leadership views payroll as an asset allocation. It buys them predictability and operational excellence.
But for you listening, whether you manage a team or you're just trying to understand your own company's culture, what does that actually look like on the ground? How does an extra $6 an hour change the mechanics of a warehouse?
It fundamentally reduces the cognitive burden on the employee.
Cognitive burden. Tell me more about that.
When you remove financial precarity, when a worker isn't constantly stressed about how they will pay for groceries or a doctor's visit, they literally have more working memory available to focus on their job.
They aren't distracted by survival.
Exactly. And the results speak for themselves. Costco's employee turnover is 6 to 8%.
Wait, 6 to 8%, while the rest of the retail industry bleeds out at 45 to 60%.
Yep. Because of that retention, Costco saves a fortune in recruitment. Their long-tenured employees know the supply chain better, they require vastly less supervision, and they deliver better customer service.
And consequently, Costco's stock has outperformed the broader retail indices and the S&P 500 over multi-decade periods.
Respect pays off. Literally.
It really does. But paying people well is clearly step one. You can't just pay people more and expect miracles if the daily culture is still toxic, right?
Right.
How does HR restructure the daily operations to make this respect actually durable?
That requires a total overhaul of internal fairness, what organizational psychologists call procedural justice. Empowered HR functions have to build the infrastructure to make respect a daily reality.
Okay, wait. I need to challenge this concept of procedural justice because the text says that employees will accept an unfavorable outcome, like not getting a promotion or getting a lower bonus, if they believe the process that led to it was fair.
Yes, they will.
That sounds a bit naive, doesn't it? I mean, human nature usually dictates that people only care about the money in their pocket. Are you telling me someone is actually okay with losing money just because the paperwork was transparent?
It's not about the paperwork, though. It's about cognitive closure and psychological safety.
Okay, explain that.
If a promotion system is a black box, the human brain naturally assumes bias or malice when it loses. It feels like an attack on their personal worth.
Right, you think they just don't like me.
Exactly. But if the system is transparent, if the criteria are clear, and the employee was given a genuine opportunity to present their case, the brain can accept the outcome.
Because it preserves their dignity.
Yes. They might be disappointed, sure, but they won't become actively disengaged or start actively sabotaging the team.
Oh, that makes the next example in the text incredibly relevant. Accenture.
Yes, Accenture.
They completely scrapped their old system of forced rankings and annual performance reviews.
Because forced rankings are the absolute enemy of procedural justice.
That's a system where a manager has to grade on a curve, right? And they mathematically have to label 10% of their team as underperformers, no matter how objectively good the whole team is.
Yes, it's awful.
So how does removing that curve actually change daily team behavior?
Well, think about the incentives. Under a forced curve, if I help you succeed, I might push myself into the bottom 10%.
Oh, wow. So it mathematically incentivizes employees to hoard information and subtly sabotage their peers.
Exactly. Accenture realized this was destroying collaboration. So they replaced it with continuous development-focused feedback.
No arbitrary math threat.
Right. By removing that, they stopped the unhealthy internal competition and significantly boosted retention. particularly among high performers who previously felt these artificial limits placed on their growth.
That makes total sense. And we also see a massive structural shift in how HR operates when it comes to technology disrupting entire workforces. The text highlights AT&T's Workforce 2020 initiative.
This is a huge one.
Yeah. Instead of just doing massive layoffs like 100,000 people whose skills were becoming obsolete due to tech disruption, HR spearheaded a $1 billion reskilling effort.
A staggering investment.
Yeah.
And it requires entirely new mechanics from HR. You can't just send 100,000 adults back to a 4-year college.
Right. So AT&T worked with universities to create what they called nanodegrees.
Yes.
Let's explain what a nanodegree is real quick for those who haven't encountered one.
It is a hyper-focused, bite-sized certification directly tied to a specific future need of the company, like data analytics or cloud computing. It takes months, not years.
But the real genius of the AT&T initiative wasn't just the courses, right? It was the transparency.
Exactly. HR mapped out exactly which legacy jobs were going away in the next few years and showed employees the specific learning paths required to transition into the new jobs being created.
They treated workforce disruption as a shared challenge to solve together, not an excuse to just extract what they could from a worker and then toss them aside.
Yes. And if we look at Unilever, they did something equally structural, but on the operational side.
Oh, right, the agile HR model.
Yes. They basically distributed HR directly into the business units.
Instead of keeping them locked away in some ivory tower.
Exactly. It sped up hiring. It allowed HR to adapt to local contexts. But, and this is key, they kept a thin central team to strictly enforce non-negotiable ethical standards.
So what does this all mean for the traditional HR department? Do they just become trainers for managers?
This raises an important question, and yes, essentially, HR's new mission is heavily focused on transferring capability to managers.
Because the immediate supervisor shapes the daily experience more than HR does.
Far more than any central HR policy ever could. HR has to pivot to training those managers on how to give effective feedback, how to resolve conflict without bias, and how to foster inclusion on a micro level.
Which really completely rewrites the dynamic between the company and the employee. The text calls this rewriting the psychological contract.
The psychological contract is just the unwritten set of expectations between employer and employee. And the old contract, trading blind, unquestioning loyalty for lifetime job security, is totally dead.
Yeah, no one expects a gold watch after 40 years at the same desk anymore, and frankly, companies don't want to offer them.
So HR has to mediate a completely new, explicit, and realistic bargain.
What does that new bargain look like?
The company offers fair notice regarding business changes, robust transition support, and portable skill development.
Meaning skills like those nano degrees that the employee can actually take with them to their next job.
Right. And in exchange, the employee offers full professional engagement and adaptability during their tenure, regardless of how long that tenure is.
It's finally treating people like adults. And the text notes this extends to distributed leadership, too, like flattening hierarchies.
Yes, like tech companies using consent-based decision-making.
Which is such a fascinating mechanism. Instead of needing unanimous agreement or top-down approval, a team choice just moves forward automatically.
Unless someone raises a principled, evidence-based objection.
Or like manufacturing plants where frontline teams are actually empowered to interview and hire their own peers.
It is entirely about trusting employees with actual agency.
Which brings us to the final driver of this new contract. Purpose. But I have to challenge the source text here. Well, it mentions integrating purpose and identity and uses Patagonia's environmental activism as this gold standard. But isn't purpose usually just like performative corporate speak?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, how many companies have this beautifully written, inspiring mission statement painted on the lobby wall while simultaneously treating their warehouse workers terribly?
Do made it count.
Exactly. How does HR keep purpose from just becoming toxic positivity?
It's a vital critique, because performative mission statements breed internal cynicism much faster than having no statement at all.
Right.
If the purpose isn't tied to tangible operational sacrifice, it's just a marketing campaign.
So how does Patagonia avoid that trap?
Because their purpose dictates their actual operations, even when it hurts the bottom line.
Like funding environmental activism.
Yeah, and intentionally designing products for long-term durability rather than planned obsolescence.
That definitely costs them repeat business in the short term.
It does.
Yeah.
But it honors their values in the long term. And that's the lesson for HR. If a company claims to value employee well-being, HR must have the authority to push back on operational schedules that demonstrably ruin employees' health. Purpose without operational authority is totally meaningless.
Wow. So, just wrapping this up for you listening, HR doesn't need to morph into a purely technical, spreadsheet driven chief work officer to survive.
No, not at all.
Instead, it must reclaim its moral authority. It has to prove, using the hard financial realities from companies like Costco and AT&T, that active structural respect for employees is the ultimate driver of long-term business performance.
HR has to be willing to act as the institutional conscience. They must say no to the short-term extractive instincts of the executive team in order to protect the business itself.
That leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as we close out this deep dive. The text argues HR needs to protect the business from its own worst instincts. But as artificial intelligence increasingly automates the very transactional tasks that executives currently value HR for, the payroll, the compliance, the resume sorting, we are approaching a massive inflection point.
We really are.
Will this technological shift actually be the catalyst that forces the C-suite to finally rely on HR for its true purpose, which is moral authority and human strategy? Or will the robots just make it easier for executives to ignore the human element entirely?
The old psychological contract is dead.
It is. So the question now is whether HR will be the architects of the new contract or just the janitors cleaning up after the algorithms. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.